This is Voicemail, the Universal Postal Union's podcast covering the wonderful world of mail. I'm your host, Ian Kerr. In this episode, I'm joined by June Kunugi, Director, Public Partnerships Division at the United Nations Children's Fund. Joining me on the line is June Kunugi. June is the Director, Public Partnerships Division at the United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF. June, welcome. It's great to have you on the UPU Voicemail podcast. We ask all of our guests, what is your first memory of the post?
Thank you, Ian, and thank you so much for having me. I have to think back, and I spent my childhoods in, pretty much in three places. It was first in New York, then Jerusalem, and then in Geneva. But in New York, I was just so young before we left that I don't have so many memories. Jerusalem also tended not to be such an active user of the post there, but I must say, I think a very friendly memory of the post was in Geneva. I went to a local public primary school, for the first year, and I just remembered the postman, just being someone who was so much part of the community, and of course, someone we saw every day. Delivering. He had this little sort of scooter and went around delivering the mail, but really also helped out in the community. And so it's a public school, so they would often, ask the parents to help out with school activities, outings and so on. And so it was just such a nice memory of having the local postman also be very much part of the school life as well, and supporting children and the whole community in many ways.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your own career journey. You've been with UNICEF for a while, working in communications. So tell us, why did you originally decide to work in the area of children's rights? And how do you see the role of communications and advocacy in supporting this work?
Right. Oh, very good question. And yes, I have been with UNICEF for, over 3 decades now. And I had started off as a journalist, and I actually covered the World Summit for Children in 1990 at the United Nations as a journalist. I was quite young, in my early 20s, and hadn't really decided what area of subject matter I would focus on as a journalist. But that World Summit for Children really changed, was transformative, I think, or just such an eye opener. And basically, the key message, and it was the brainchild of a former UNICEF executive director, James P. Grant. And basically, the message is, at that time, we had child mortality rates. 40,000 children under 5 years of age were dying every day from largely preventable causes such as disease, malnutrition, conflict as well. And so the message was, the world has the means, the resources, the technology, the know how, to actually counter these largely preventable child deaths. What's lacking is sufficient political will. And again, the whole summit, and at that time it was the largest ever gathering of heads of state and government ever at that time. This was even before the Rio Environment Conference, etc. And so it was about engagement at the highest political levels, and really to get them to commit, to a decade long plan of action and goals for children to increase services and support to them in health, education, nutrition, etc. And so all of that about garnering, political will is linked to advocacy and communication as key strategies to basically change, political priorities, and to get more people to commit, and leaders, decision makers, to commit to making those resource allocations and policy priorities to enable that positive change to happen.
Now, this year, the UPU, or for the first time, I should mention, the UNICEF is partnering with the UPU on one of its major advocacy initiatives, which is the International Letter Writing Competition for Young People. Every year, the competition aims to raise awareness of important causes among the youth. So, how does UNICEF work to sensitise kids about the world's major challenges and the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, it's we do it in multiple ways. I mean, every year, so we mark together with the rest of the world World Children's Day, which is on the 20th of November. And that was actually the day that the Convention on the Rights of the Child was adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1989. But what we do is it's an day, it's one day in the year, but of course it's linking to, a year's worth of activities, looking at what needs to be done, for and with children. And that's key because in fact on World Children's Day, what we support are very much child-led activities, and we create space for them to bring, to the attention of leaders, opinion leaders, community leaders, everybody. What is needed to support and fulfill children's rights? What actions have they been doing? What more needs to be done? And again, how do we do things in partnership? We also have, a large body of resources and knowledge, including online about the Sustainable Development Goals, which are universal, and we do them. We also produce them in child-friendly formats so that they're accessible, and of course in multiple languages. And again, it's key to actually tailor a lot of these assets into formats and media, so often animation or online resources, etc., that are appealing to young people. And there's also something called the world's largest lesson, which since 2015 has brought education on the Sustainable Development Goals to tens of millions of children in about 160 countries. And so, along with teaching workshops in person, we have resources online to help train, and again in multiple languages, 30 different languages so far. And again, and then also something that happened that was developed as a program by UNICEF is, we have our own country offices and area offices in 150 countries where we have programs of cooperation with host governments, and we work together with communities, children, etc. We also have 33 national committees for UNICEF, and these are they were started in the United States, but in other countries, many European countries, Japan's, Republic of Korea, others, and they have also taken up the work of child rights advocacy and increasing awareness and action towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals with a child focus. And they had, for many years, already had a program. First, it was called Education for Development, and then it's also about, I think in some places they call it Child Rights Respecting Schools. But it really, again, increases awareness of what are the goals, the rights, to which, member states, countries have made commitments. But children's participation is very much part of that as well, and very much needed. And it also teaches about the universality of the goals and rights, and also that, the peoples of the world are actually interdependent. And not only that, but children have agency. They have capacity to make a difference as well. And of course, this is in line with their evolving capabilities, but very much, every child can do something. And in the United States, they remember UNICEF for the Halloween, the trick or treat for UNICEF. They had these little orange boxes that the kids would carry when they were trick or treating in their costumes, and they would say trick or treat for UNICEF, and they would hold out the orange box, and people would drop coins in. But then, I've met adults, and they said they were growing up and because I'm in New York, right? And so they said growing up as a kid in Harlem, and maybe from a family that was, low to middle income, but just saying, to think that, even though I didn't have much, I could actually help children who had even less in other countries, and they said that was something very empowering to them as well. So again, it's about, what it is that we're aspiring to and supporting in terms of global plans of action, but then also creating pathways for participation by children, and really, prioritizing that, because they are, first of all, they have agency, and they are the citizens and the decision makers of the future. So, and the present and the future. Sorry.
Returning then to the international letter writing competition, how does partnering with the UPU on this competition align with and support UNICEF's goals and mission?
So I think it's a wonderful partnership, first of all, and I'm just, so thrilled that we have this opportunity, because I think the UPU also looks at how to increase, first of all, to increase awareness and understanding and support for action towards the achievement of, the global agenda, the agenda for 2030. And very much it's about doing this with and for children. So again, that very much aligns with UNICEF's mission, supporting positive change, including with children, and also using it as a means to increase their awareness of what of some of these global goals and agendas, and the fact that they have rights themselves. So again, it's very interesting. Even as far back as 1992, we had some thinking. There was a paper on children's participation done by Roger Hart, who had modeled this ladder of children's participation. And, it goes, and there are 8 different steps, but going from tokenism to citizenship. And this was based on some earlier work that had been done, I think, in the US to look at citizen participation. And I think UPU is that partnership is so valuable because everyone thinks right now everything is about digitalization and being online and mobile and internet reach, etc. But there's still many parts of the world that are not yet connected, or where it's out of reach or out of the means of still large parts of the population, including children. So I think traditional channels, including postal channels and through letters and communication through postal networks, has great value. And I think it helps with equity and increasing the opportunities for children, maybe in harder to reach communities, etc., to participate and to have the same opportunities, including for expression, because this is a letter writing competition. So again, it's a wonderful opportunity to increase the opportunities for children, particularly maybe in disadvantaged communities, hard to reach communities. And yeah, and I think it's also a feedback loop, because they will have their suggestions, they will also reflect on the realities in their homes and communities. And it's wonderful to have that opportunity for diverse parts of the global population to actually share their thoughts, their opinions, their suggestions, including to policymakers. We have something called U Report, which is an online. It is online. It's an online platform, but it's essentially it started off as kind of a Voices of Youth platform. Now it has 33 and a half million registered children and youth, and they often do things like increase awareness. Of course, it's a channel for that, but it's also a feedback channel. So they do a lot of polls and surveys, and they create channels for children and young people to again express their opinions, to help prioritize, and really to draw the attention of leaders to what the critical issues are for children, and also what they can do to support positive action.
You mentioned earlier about opportunities, or the opportunities that this letter writing competition creates. So just expanding on that idea, then, how do you see the role of letter writing in promoting education and promoting literacy, particularly, as you just mentioned, in, say, developing countries? And do you see any other ways that the postal sector can help uphold and even be advocates for children's rights?
Yes, again, I think the wonderful thing about the postal service is that it has pretty much universal reach, I would think. Right, it's been built up over decades and decades, and so, and it's there, and it's something that is in every community in one form or another. And again, it's an institution. I think there are also linkages in some cases. We heard about, for example, in Vietnam, they're linking with the whole education system. So, for example, the letter writing campaign by UPU will be, you know, promoted, and its awareness of it will be increased through the education system. So again, it has tremendous reach. It has a great credibility, I would say. It has, and the value of it is that it involves children's expression directly. And I think in this day and age where there's a lot of, well, there's a lot of opportunities, but some questions about AI as well, right? And we just have to manage that whole digital agenda, but there's something about the visibility, the tangibility, or the authenticity of a letter that is a very human form of expression. It reflects the personality and even the penmanship or the writing ability of the writer and so in that sense, in an era where things are becoming increasingly you know channeled in certain forms. I think the letter writing, the postal channel is again a very people to people channel that is something that's still very human and has tremendous reach. So again, I think the educational contribution that UPU will be making and the galvanizing towards action and eliciting ideas and suggestions from children themselves is tremendous and very much hope that that will continue.
The UNICEF UPU partnership comes right before the UN Summit of the Future. So, how do you think international organisations can work together to better support and amplify the voices of youth and ensure that they're heard in these major global forums?
Yes, very important and timely question. I think for, while UNICEF, for years, decades has been working, on meaningful children's participation. I mentioned earlier this whole idea of the ladder of participation and making sure, that we're not just being tokenistic, that it really does have meaning, value, and empowers children, right? At different levels. But I think the UN system also has been coming up to speed in terms of and making really significant progress in creating platforms and opportunities and mechanisms and an architecture actually for supporting particularly youth participation and attention to the needs and rights of young people. We have the UN Youth Strategy. There's a Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security. And that's key, again, showing how, regular citizens and young citizens in particular can make important contributions to peace and security. And then we now have an Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs. But I do want to point out that children, so that's all, people under 18, 18 and under, are distinct from youth. And we are seeing sometimes that because youth, they span a much, you know, broader age range, and many are actually politically active as well, they often get more attention than children. And but children also have unique and distinct rights and abilities, and it is so important that they are given the space, but also recognition and visibility in things like UN commitments and resolutions as well. At the same time, because they are minors, right? It's important that when they participate, that they are protected because, especially younger children. So, for example, if we're talking about processes or meetings or etc., they usually need like a chaperone, an adult guardian. They need to have channels that are appropriate for them, platforms, and also they need to have audiences that are actually listening to them. I mean, really truly listening with and paying attention to what they say and have an open mind to take on board what they are conveying and expressing and asking for. And also they need to be aware and in agreement with, of course, how their contributions will be used. Yeah, and so again, UNICEF and other, partners, NGOs, Save the Children, and others, we collectively have a lot of experience in enabling children's participation, and of course are ready to work with others to bring that to many other platforms and fora.
Now, you mentioned authenticity before, as well as AI. Barely a conversation can go by these days without AI being thrown in there recklessly. So we're going to throw AI in right now. How do you see the future of writing and even education in general, I suppose, with this rise of technology and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, again, I think they're absolutely, it's very much a topic of the day, and there are tremendous opportunities, and that's the thing. I think we have some concerns, but at the same time, we also don't probably see all the possible benefits that new technology and including AI can bring. What we're looking for is how to harness the benefits that technology can bring to expanding opportunities or creating new opportunities for, youth and children's engagement and empowerment, supporting, educational and learning activities, but even basic social services like healthcare and social protection. And there's tremendous opportunities on harnessing the benefits of AI for doing things so much more efficiently, for synthesizing, for analyzing, at speeds that human beings cannot do. I think it can also be used to find ways to bridge divides, including digital divides, looking at ways that to manage risks, perhaps to protect, also, uh, definitely there needs to be sufficient attention and resources dedicated to online safety, protecting, children's and everyone's rights. And of course, we mean data privacy, etc. And then also, but all of this really does need to be accompanied by and to be informed by understanding of how children use and approach and engage with different technologies. Again, they have evolving capacities, and it's important that sort of safety measures and guardrails or whatever are built into systems to ensure that rights are protected, because we do see that you know once something is said or done, it's often out there forever, and there is a lot of misinformation as well, and tremendous dangers associated with those. So again, it's important that particularly with children who, often don't have the same capabilities, or well, sometimes they're far ahead of adults, it seems, as well, but they can also, be very vulnerable to being exploited and misinformed and misguided. So again, we need to have systems that build in protections for children as well.
Let's talk about the art of letter writing. With your professional hat on as a professional journalist, how do you think we can keep the art of writing alive?
Wow, that's a that's a big question. I think, there's it is such a human form of expression, and it's wonderful to have moments that also celebrate letter writing, which I think this what, the UPU campaign with UNICEF does as well. It actually celebrates letter writing in an era where more and more communication is done, digitally. I think we should recognize and value, again, as I mentioned, the reach, the networks, the credibility, postal networks and UPU have. The art of writing, again, it's something that I think brain development is enhanced, by both the physical and the cognitive faculties that one has to draw upon, the creative talents that people have. And again, it also requires attention and focus. Often when people are texting or writing emails, they're multitasking, etc. But I think letter writing is something that you actually have to focus more on, just by the nature of what it is. This will be something a little bit random, but just in New York, the Morgan Library has an exhibition about Beatrix Potter. The she wrote the Tale of Peter Rabbit. What's amazing was that she didn't start off as being or wanting to be a children's author. It actually started from her writing letters, and she was somewhat, I think, of an introvert growing up, and the young people, the children she was in touch with, were more the children of like her governess, etc. And so she wrote lengthy letters and exchanges with children, and she added like little drawings, and she created stories, and then at the age of 36, she was encouraged and asked to actually think about putting them all in a book. And so the governess, I think, one of her governesses had saved all the letters, and she lent them back to Beatrix Potter and said, "Look, here's some material. Why don't you put them into, and then, you know, make the create storybooks, but then I want the letters back." And so that's wonderful. I think it's just it brings out. It's also about how one communicates with others and contributes. That was her contribution to the world. Another wonderful thing about Beatrix Potter is that she not only did that, but she went on to be a great conservationist. She even was a farmer, so again, very multi-talented, and she was a great artist as well. And I think, but a big part of that, I think, came from that letter writing that she did from an early age onwards.
I somehow can't imagine that in the future there'll be an exhibition of great emails of the
Right,
21st, of the early 21st century.
right.
Or maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Returning to the international letter writing competition, you're one of the jury members this year. So, what are you looking forward to, or is there anything in particular you're looking forward to in the judging process?
Well, I think really looking forward to seeing what children themselves have to say and to suggest. And I'm always inspired and uplifted by what children say and communicate because I mean not, you know, on the scale of things, it's always that I think they're at an age where they're still discovering the world. They have a lot of idealism. They may have had very tough experiences, but and so seeing the reflection of that is also very important. But they have that energy and drive, and I've seen this globally, a very positive energy and the belief and the hope that through action, through engagement, through inspiration, including their inspiring others, positive change in the world is possible. And I really expect some of that will be in those letters. And again, seeing something created and produced in a very human way, letter writing, is something I'm very much looking forward to as well.
And now, to wrap it up, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because this year's competition invites children to address their letters to future generations. So now, as someone who's dedicated her career to supporting the youngest,
Mhm.
what would you say if you were to express your hopes about the future that they'll inherit?
I think
It's not an easy question, is it?
yeah, I was gonna say it's a bit similar to what I had just said. It's very much that I believe that it's through creating opportunities for young people and making sure that children's voices are heard. First of all, that they're given the opportunity to express themselves and then are properly listened to. That will also inspire positive change. And it's so important that now and in future, eras and future generations continue to be given those opportunities, or even if they could be expanded. They, young people and children, again, have that tremendous positive drive, energy, idealism, and hope. And so hope also inspires greater hope. And I think it's only by that that we will continue to motivate and advance positive change.
June Kunugi, Director, Public Partnerships Division at the United Nations Children's Fund. Thank you very much for joining us on the UPU Voicemail podcast today.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
You've been listening to Voicemail, the official podcast of the Universal Postal Union. Subscribe to the podcast on your favourite podcast platform and you'll get each episode downloaded to the device of your choosing as it's released. My thanks to the team at the UPU for their help putting together this episode. I'm your host, Ian Kerr, and I'll look forward to your company next time on Voicemail, the podcast of the UPU.